Hi there, it's Bill with the Doomer Bloomer podcast. Now, if you're a listener to the show, you know that I've been doing this for a long time. But now there's an easier way to make a podcast. If you haven't heard about Anchor, let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your computer or phone. The Anchor app will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Cheers. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Doomer Bloomer podcast with Will S. All right, if you've been a longtime listener of the show, you know that we're talking about the hero's journey, the Doomer to Bloomer's path, and how to get what you want out of life with the 9 pillars framework. Today on the podcast, I have a guest who has spent time with the Shaolin monks, trekked to Mount Everest, studied Tibetan monks, has his own #1 podcast. His name is Matt Belair. How are you doing today, Matt?
I'm great, man. Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. It's so much easier being on the other side of the mic, so I appreciate the work.
You are welcome. I'm glad we connected. And yeah, I would love to get your take on life and the Doomer to Bloomer path and kind of where you are in your hero's journey.
Sure. Yeah. Well, for me, it's been a long road for sure. When I was younger, I enjoyed martial arts and still do. And, you know, I've always been on this quest for human potential, but I always wanted to travel as well. So I've been to about 25 countries. You know, I've been able to train with very interesting people like the Shaolin monks and the Tibetan monks, like you mentioned, also some Native American elders. And so for me, it's just been an exploration of my own potential and human potential. And also the big questions, like what the hell is actually going on the planet? You know, like, where do we go when we die? You know, what's the meaning of life? What's our actual history? Like, who the hell built the pyramids? You know, those things are fascinating. And so, you know, when you really uncover history, and look into it, it's very fascinating. Ancient history, Sumeria, you know, all the different stories. And so trying to pick apart truth and you know, fiction and what we're told it's an interesting thing. So for me, it's been a long journey, and you know, right now where I am is being in Ontario. I'd like to go back out west. I did 8 years on my snowboard in Whistler, and I love that. And I want to get back into the mountains. And you know, I've been working really hard on this podcast for the last 5 years, and really studying what's going on in the world and trying to be of support there. But yeah, I guess you can let me know where you want to dive in, because I can get lost in a rabbit hole quite easily. So you might want to steer it a little bit.
What's on your mind right now in terms of your podcast? What's front and center in your mind right now?
Right now for the podcast, it's law, actually, which it seems like a boring topic. I wouldn't want to go into that. You know, since March, I've been 100% health, you know, going down the rabbit hole of germ theory versus terrain theory, trying to figure out what's going on with this whole COVID thing. Spent like 500 hours of research on that, which has been very fascinating. And now it's transitioned into law. And then I heard about things like free man on the land and people who didn't pay taxes, and, you know, your birth certificate being a shipping container receipt. And I knew about some of this stuff when I was younger. I heard about it and I read about it and was like, okay, there's something here, but I don't quite understand it, you know? And so as of late, I've been connected to a lot of people because what's happening is more and more tyranny. So it's like, how do we not get vaccinated if we don't want to? How do we deny these, tests? How, like, if they're going to lock down travel, right? How do I get past that, or hold my own freedom? You know, how do I have my freedom? And so I've been focused fully on law, which is interesting because when I looked into war and starvation, so I was looking at human potential as a kid and as a martial artist and an athlete when I was younger. But my other thing was, why do we have war and starvation? Didn't make any sense. So I'd look into that, and I learned about kings and queens and the global elite and all that kind of stuff, which is a real thing, and it does exist. But it would talk about this Luciferianism and Satanism, and I was like, okay, yeah, that probably exists. But now understanding law in the Bar Association and international bankers, it actually is a straight up Luciferian satanic system. And the reason why I say that is because there's a great definition by Rudolf Steiner that says anything that seeks to restrict or bind by definition is Luciferian. And so what these people are doing is they are tricking you into consent. And that's what's going on with our law. So, your birth certificate being a shipping container receipt. Also, when you go into court, I did law and security in college, and, one of our professors was telling us, like, these different things. And he said, well, if you go into court, like, the meanings of words are different. And I was like, what the hell do you mean? Like, why don't they just use English? Well, person, like the definition of person in Black's Law Dictionary can be monster, person. I believe it's person. And also goat in all capitals means sewer. So you go in there and think that you're speaking English, but they actually have a different language. It's a law society. And so they'll use that for you to consent because it's all consent based. And then you're subject to their jurisdiction. So I'm only a beginner at this, and there's a lot of great people out there. There's a lot of great resources, but it's imperative for people to know because they're tricking, like, good people don't go around trying to trick other people to harm them and take their stuff. But that's indeed exactly what's happening to us. And we're all witnessing it now with these stricter lockdowns and what they want to do. They're really impeding free people. It doesn't make any sense if you think about it. And so we need to figure out what that remedy is, have that understanding, because then it will become null and void. So it is a little bit dense, but there are some people out there right now really making it easy. And it's so imperative because, like, even with the lockdown that's going to come here, it's in Australia already, but they'll say you can't travel between cities. All they're going to do is fine you. Even if they put military on the street, they'll give you a fine, and then that's an offer as well. So learn how to fight the fine or take it to court, or put without prejudice on your license and look into that. There's a great book on that. Means you're not going to contract with them, and just try that one out. Update your signature and put without prejudice on it and see what happens. So yeah, so that's it. So I'll try not to go too far down that rabbit hole. See if you want to jump in.
I love it. I love that we actually had an episode when I first started the podcast about going galt. So basically going back to, this is the way I see it. I look at the cycles of history, and I look at how things repeat themselves on about an 80-year cycle. And I just actually finished a book by Stefan Arnio. You may know the late Stefan Arnio, real estate investor from Manitoba. But he wrote, "Hard times create strong men. Weak men create hard times." And we're coming from a cycle of weak men now creating hard times, because we lived through the good times of after World War II, and the boom times of the 1950s, 60s, 70s. And then in 1971, when they abolished the gold standard, we had this proliferation of the debasement of the money system, just going towards negative infinity in terms of the value, because we don't have a standardized currency that's tied to as before, like the gold standard. Money is just a means of exchange now. It doesn't actually have physical value in that sense. So people are, like you said, with the Luciferian system, people are getting, like you said, getting very restricted, and they don't even know why. So yeah, it's interesting that you bring up the free man, because there are alternatives. Like back in the dirty 30s or 1920s, people used to live off the land, and we don't really do that as much anymore. We're dependent on the grocery stores, and we're dependent on the governments for our day to day necessities. So I'm just kind of wondering, in your travels, because it sounds like you've been to like you said 25 countries. So like contrasting North American culture to let's say more Eastern philosophy. Like what's your take on that?
Oh, well, yeah, I have traveled to many countries. Nepal was one of my favorite. So that's where I went and I trekked Mount Everest, and I also studied Tibetan Buddhism. And so I taught English class to younger kids in the morning, and then had conversation with older monks in the afternoon. And, you kind of hear sometimes that they say the poorer countries are actually happier. And that was actually my experience in Nepal and in Cambodia. They were very, very poor. And, but they were happier. They were happier than we are. They're just content. Life is simple, and it's slower. It's more real and genuine. A lot of people are really go 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 in the States and in Canada and North America and Europe as well. And so, I've been fortunate to see so many different ways of living, so many different ways of life, even within Canada, right? Like you're out in Edmonton and I'm near Toronto right now, but living in the mountains is a slower pace, right? And so when you get to experience those things, you can then make a choice on what type of lifestyle you prefer. And so what I really enjoyed about Nepal was just the slow pace, and there was no rushing around, and it was just a lot of beautiful community, really caring people. And it's just a whole different thought process. And I remember the homestay I was at. He's like, I want to come to Canada. I was like, you could, but you probably be working a lot, right, for this apartment. He's spending all day with his kids. He's teaching English. He's doing all that kind of stuff. I said, honestly, you probably have a better quality of life here than you would in Canada. Like we do have opportunity to grow and a lot of benefits. It's just that I think that we as people can get a little bit sidetracked on the acquisition of money, and so we're not spending time with our kids, we're not doing things that we are passionate about, we're not living our life purpose. And we have that freedom here to create and live our life purpose. And that's really what my work has been focused on, is human potential. How do I design and live a good life for me, because it's my life, right? So I want to live it to the fullest. And then how do I share that with others? And so many people don't think about what their life purpose would be, or what they're meant to do, or what they're passionate about, and how to work towards that. And so that's been most of the work on the podcast and helping people. And it's a really beautiful experience when you can start directing your life in that way. Who am I? What did I come here to do? What am I curious about? What am I passionate about? And how can I give back to my community? And when we understand and know our vocation and what we're meant to do, we can then go ahead and create that. And that's the privilege we get in the Western societies and developed countries. We have all of that opportunity to create who we want to be. And the problem is, most people never question that. They never don't even consider it and think it's an option or work towards it. But we have all got that capability and power. And it's such a meaningful and fulfilling experience if you do that. And only you're the one who can kind of take that journey, right? We put money first and our curiosities and our passions second. Well, if we put our curiosities, our passions first and figure out how to make the money after, it's a much better way to lead your life. And everybody who does it will say the same thing. It's very challenging because it's not guaranteed, right? Like if you go get a job in insurance or wherever the case is, you might have guaranteed money as much as it can be guaranteed. But then you're putting the passion to the side. So, even if you just start to chip away at it a little bit each week, over a year's time, you're going to have a tremendous difference in where you are in your life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're talking about the idea of a calling, right? Like Wayne Dyer talks about the same thing, right? Like you feel called to do something, whatever that may be. You might want to be the world's greatest origamist or something like that, or I don't know. You pick obscure job title here, right?
Oh yeah. Well, somebody
Um,
on the podcast was telling me about this person who made art pieces out of butter. And apparently they're absolutely crushing it. Like, what? I was like, what are you talking about? I was talking about how you can design, a life if you really think about what you're passionate about, what you want to do. And the podcast guest tells me the story about a person they know about, becoming this famous person who makes crazy sculptures and art out of butter. And I was like, that is ridiculous. So if that's possible, whatever you can imagine is going to be less ridiculous than that, So yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, I love Wayne Dyer too. He unfortunately he's passed now, but a lot of great works, and I love his philosophies and teachings.
Yeah, I read Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life in 2016, 2017. It kind of got me out of a doomer mindset at that time. And I haven't really looked back since. I kind of embraced the Tao Te Ching as my personal internal spirituality and the core to my being. And I ask myself, how can I serve? I ask myself that every day. I have post-it notes and reminders. How, how we, I love how you talk about the life's purpose too. Like, you know, uh, so I just looked at your bio here, and it's like, what is the best resources that have helped you along the way? And you put the creator. So what does that mean to you? I'm open.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like going through those questions. I've read tons of books. I've probably invested $200,000 at least into personal development, doing every training, every single thing that I can under the sun to develop my mind, body, and spirit. But as far as resources go, you just need one, and that's your connection with spirit, God, the Creator. And so that's got to be first and foremost. Outside of any teaching or recommendation, you as the master, we hear it all the time. Even when I went to, study with the Shaolin monks and Tibetan monks, right? It's like, you're still looking for this outside of master. And what I realized was studying with these Tibetan monks is they were people, and they would explain that to you. You know what I mean? They're saying, it's always an internal process. There are no secrets. There are good processes, right? But your action, is going to be the most important thing. And so learning to listen to your internal guidance system. And I used to think that I thought like everybody else. And when I was a teenager and everybody was going to university, I realized I actually didn't think like everyone else, because not one of my friends was thinking about where they wanted to travel, what they wanted to do, what they wanted to do with their lives. They were only thinking, go to university and get a job. And I couldn't believe I was the only one thinking about going out west and snowboarding and figuring out a way to travel. And I thought, wait, you guys are signing up to work 40 hours a week, 2 days off, 2 weeks of vacation. I was like, you can't think of a better model than that. Like, I'm not doing that. There's got to be another way to do existence in life. That sounds like a terrible life. I don't want to do that. And so I just realized that I thought a little bit differently, and people don't really think about who they are and what they want to do, or listen to their intuition. And that's the only thing that I've done that's been different. I figured out who I am, what I'm curious about, what I want to learn and grow. And I move towards that. And it's that impulse, that inner knowing that is kind of guided, and it will guide you to the books. It'll guide you to the education. It will guide you to the experiences, to the people you need on your path. It's the only thing that and everything else is a wonderful bonus. You know what I mean? All the experiences along the way, because it's a never ending learning process. It is never, ever complete. You'll always learn, you'll always grow. And so it just makes it a much more beautiful experience if you're directing it, creating your life on purpose rather than having it created by default, for someone else's means. And I always found it interesting, of all the coaching and stuff that I've done in my life and all the travels, I'd always ask people, like, what would you do if you're retired? What would you do if you had unlimited money? Right. And people don't even think about these questions. Right. And they just live their life, and I'm like, man, everyone is capable of so much. I believe any human has infinite capabilities, but we're gonna have to work and put effort towards it, And so, but what else? Like, why not? What else are you doing with your life? Like, you can do it, So yeah. So I always find that interesting that people don't question that. They don't ask these questions. So it still blows my mind. And I think that's why I've transitioned all my work. I was doing peak performance coaching and working with high level athletes, Olympians, things like that. And, since the podcast, I was like, yeah, coaching and sport is great, but, I'm really interested in personal development and spirituality. You mentioned the Tao Te Ching, which is absolutely a phenomenal book and phenomenal teachings. But living our life purpose is the most important thing we can do for all of humanity. And you also mentioned being of service, and I think that's beautiful because for me, what an awakened person or an enlightened person does, or who they are, is just basically two very core fundamental things. The first is they take 100% responsibility for everything in their life. So that way they're a creator and not a victim. They can change their circumstances. If it's someone else's fault, then you have no power. Your power is now gone. And they think about, what can I give? How can I serve? Right. And when you think about how you can contribute rather than what can I get, then it's a whole different way of living. And so if you're pursuing your curiosities and passions, you become a master of that and you can share it with other people. So you're honoring yourself and who you came here to be, and then you share it with other people. It's so simple, but people go, oh, well, how much will I get paid for that? I don't know how much you'll get paid. Maybe you get a little bit, maybe you get a ton. I'm not so sure. I don't know. I don't have that answer, but I know you'll figure it out. And I know that if you have a near-death experience, which I've had way too many, I think I've had like 5 now, you're going to be happy that you made that choice. You're not going to be like, I wish I didn't pursue my life purpose and interests, when that's not going to happen. You're going to say, oh man, why didn't I go for it? Why didn't I test myself? Why didn't I get clear on who I was and what was important to me and pursue that with all of my spirit and will? That makes more sense, doesn't it?
I think it's best summed up by the words, like the Roman legions. It's called "burn the boats." They arrive on shore and they burn the boats behind them. There is no plan B, C. It's plan A or nothing. And it's funny that you mentioned it. I feel the money equation. It's a very North American, U.S. centric sort of notion. That we're running these scripts. Like I call those type of people NPCs, non-player characters, because they're just running the script that they're told in society, right? Because if you think of how the education system is designed at this instance, it's actually designed on the old Prussian system, where you time in at a certain time, 9 a.m., and you time out at a certain time. It's not designed to create free thinking or people who are able to uh, negotiate or become. I guess what we need in a society is we've transitioned from industrial society to technological society, and now we're reaching a point where we need to be an entrepreneurial society in the sense that whatever thing, like you said, whatever, if you want to carve butter and you can turn that into a reality, you can do it. There's a marketplace for it now. There's platforms like Etsy or Patreon or YouTube or what have you. It's just, we have to turn from being a consumer of things to a producer, right? But like even the old, like the pre-industrial, like pre-World War II, like people used to produce things on their own, right? We don't do that anymore. All of our stuff from Walmart comes from China or some other third world country or what have you. We have a society that's become globalized, but we need to start thinking global but acting local. I think that's kind of the new script that has to start running for people. You know what I mean? And I think especially with this COVID situation, like for myself personally, it helped me realize what was not working in my life and what was working in my life. You know, and I had to transition from, like you said, what can I get versus what can I give, right? And that I think that's an important distinction to make. If you start becoming a go giver versus a go getter, and you give freely of whatever your time, your effort, whatever content or thing that you want to pursue, I think what naturally tends to happen is that other people start getting attracted by your vibe, right? You know, I don't know what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree, and I love all that. I love the go giver. It's so great. Yeah, and one of the things on the attracting your tribe type of thing, for my podcast, I set the intention. I'm like, I want to have meaningful conversations with people who, uh, you know, I kind of set the intention the most enlightened, authentic, aware, masters of health, spirituality, wellness, personal development, out of the box thinking, and so what it's done is it's let other people in the world know what I'm about. Right. And so with all this COVID stuff, I've made so many friends who are like minded, who are like spirited, or who are like hearted with these great divides. Right. Like people have become, if you go on Facebook and Twitter, people have become such a-holes everywhere. It's ludicrous how people are behaving. You would never, imagine the 1980s, and people in Twitter going out in public and speaking that way to people, you get your ass kicked. Right. And so now because they're on Twitter, they feel like they can just say whatever they want and just be absolutely terrible people. And so what the podcast has done is like connect me to like-minded, like-hearted, like-spirited people. And that benefit is massive. The opportunities that are now being presented to me are massive. The podcast financially for the last 6 years, I'm 36. I've never been like, how can I get a bunch of money? It's been, how can I travel? How can I create these experiences? And luckily, the universe and the creator has provided me enough to travel. But it's always been a struggle financially. And how will I figure this out? But it always gets figured out. And so, I'm not sitting here on tons and tons of money. The podcast has never made a ton of money. But now what I'm getting as far as value and abundance from connections and opportunities is priceless. And that's because I've committed to this path for the right reasons, for the reasons of contributing. So, at the very least, you're setting the signal to other people that say, hey, you're authentic. You know what I mean? You are of service to people, and you can have a regular job. You can do whatever, but it's your way of being and it's your intent. People pick up on that frequency. You can have any job with the intent to still be of service. You know what I mean? And that frequency is what's going to guide you and connect you to other people. And then it's just from there, if you want to go a little bit of a step further, it's just, what do you want to create? What would you do with your time if you had unlimited time? And that's when you go into like purpose and vocation. But really, any positive intent of being of service, you're gonna attract your tribe, and you're gonna attract the people you want to participate with, you want to build with, and especially in these times, nothing could be more valuable.
Yeah, 100%. Like it's really, I don't know, it's really shifted this last year. Like it's I can see what you mean by the, it's not so much what you do, it's more about how and why you do it. It's more of a, it's more of a mind, it's more of the mindset than anything. You know what I mean? And I I would like to ask you, how, like, if you like, because this podcast is the Doomer Bloomer podcast. So my intent here is to try and get people. If I was like, I'm trying to project myself back 10 years ago, and if I was giving advice to myself 10 years ago, what would you do? You know, and how would you go about it? So my question is like, if you're in a doomer mindset, like let's say that like COVID's got you down, you're not doing so great, so hot right now. As a doomer, like how do you get on that path to becoming a bloomer? So in life, business, relationships, what would be your best advice, Matt?
Well, first of all, it's a fantastic question, and I'll give it in an example. So, I would always ask people that I travel with, like, what would you do if you had $1 million, right? What would you do if you could do anything with your life? What would you do? And people have such a problem answering that question. And I feel like it's just a basic question. I'm like, how do you have a problem answering this? So I had one friend in Toronto, and he's so analytical. I'd be like, what would you do if you could do anything? And he's going to tell me more savings or something ridiculous. He's just the most analytical human I have ever met, And so I go, you know what? I'm going to just do a guided meditation with you, right? So off the top of my head, I do a guided meditation with them. And basically I focus on his heart and I ask him the same series of questions, but in a hypnosis or meditative state. And he gave me the most beautiful answers. He started crying in the middle of it, and had a really profound experience. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So the way that works is like, when I was training, and I still do some of this, training extreme sports athletes, X Games athletes, things like that, I'd be like, okay, imagine a double backflip. And they're like, I can't because I've never done one. I don't know what that feels like. And I go, okay, well, just imagine your favorite athlete that can do that. Now imagine it. And by them pretending to be another person, they're able to then visualize the thing that they want to do because that person can do it. So when we go through the lens of the heart, it's such a different experience. And so the problem is when you ask someone that question, you're asking their conscious mind. Your conscious mind, number one thing is to keep you safe. You walk, you look both ways when you cross the street. So for us to be safe, we need to eat, right? And for us to eat, we need money. So when I ask that question, your conscious mind is going to distort the answer because it doesn't want to kill you. It doesn't want to say, oh yeah, I would love to be an artist, or I would love to, make butter art, but you need to survive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to distort that answer so you don't kill me, right? I'm trying to help you. But the heart knows it's eternal. It knows it's connected to everything, and it knows that you have infinite possibilities, and it knows you're not just going to die, that you're capable of anything. And so when you go through that lens, the heart gives you a totally different answer. And so I started doing that process with many people with profound results, and everybody wanted the same thing. They wanted good community. They wanted to work in fields that they were passionate about. They wanted their work to be things that they enjoyed. They wanted to live in nature. So what we need as human beings is very simple. It's very limited. So the first thing is let go of almost everything that you've ever been told. What you need to do is get very clear on your values. What is important to you? Start asking yourself very serious questions. I got, any of these listeners can go through the Soul Compass course or the Quantum Heart Hypnosis. I can make it available to any of your listeners. And I would say go through those processes. And that is what's guided my entire life since I got my quote unquote freedom when I was done my education and travel the world. Just those questions, and it unfolds. So your life purpose isn't an end destination. You don't like get this thing and then it's done, right? I didn't go snowboarding and then my life purpose was done, and then travel to 25 countries and then my life purpose is done. It always unfolds with your skill sets and experiences. So you need constant alignment. So it's kind of like you're on the ocean and your life purpose is a direction, but most people don't know if they're going north, east, south, or west. And what they're doing is they're just going along with the current of mainstream. So they're creating their life by default. Means like, yeah, non-players or whatever you said. They just, whatever culture, whatever their parents want, that's what they're going to do. Yeah. So that's it. That's what I would tell you.
The NPC.
Yeah, exactly. So you need to start creating it purposefully. And that's asking yourself, what are your values? What's most important to you? What are you curious about? What would you do if you couldn't fail? How do you want to contribute to the world? And start asking those questions and then taking action, because it's going to be over a lifetime. And when I was younger in my 20s, I was like, oh, okay, well, by the time I'm 30, I'm going to have $1 million. My mic cut out, I think. So
Yeah.
when I was in my 20s, I thought in my 30s I would have my life purpose all sorted and millions of dollars. But what happened was I was able to create my life deliberately. It just happened slower. So now I'm like, if I'm going to do anything, I'm okay with committing 10 years to it. I have no problem with that because it's going to be so meaningful. I'll just work away diligently over time. And that's how long stuff takes. So you'll be moving and paddling in a direction of your choosing. And so that's the most important thing, because the how is unique to everyone. Every single person is going to have a different how, right? So you might need to start learning about business. You might need to start learning about whatever the case is. You're just going to slowly chip away, go back to those coordinates. The coordinates are your values, your curiosities, your contributions, your inner knowing, your inner dialogue, your inner perspective, honoring that, and then taking the next step, because that's all you can do at that time is just take that next step. And in taking that step, if it's in alignment with who you truly are, or if you're selling out in some sort of capacity. And I've heard it once on my podcast, like the meaning of life is to not sell your soul. And we sell our souls in all these different ways for paychecks, right? For different amounts of paychecks. And that means your soul says, I really wish you were studying this and doing this. And your mind says, well, I've got to go to this job to get this paycheck because I'm going to get lots of money in this big house. Well, your soul doesn't give a shit about any of that. Right. And when you die, you're going to get that mirror reflection saying, damn, like that wasn't worth it. So you want to be in the space where you fully pursued with ruthless spiritual integrity what you came here to do and who you came here to be.
Wow, I like that. Where are you? Who are you? Yeah, who are you supposed to be? All right, it's something we talk about a lot. I so and the other question I have is like for me I just had a gentleman on last week who talked about life as a craft. His name is Charles Cullens. He'll be on this coming week. Um, but he talked about there's phases of life, apprenticeship phase, journey work phase, uh, mastery phase, and then you come back around to becoming oh, you're working on your mic. Yeah. So coming back around, who has inspired you, Matt, in the last 10-15 years? Like who have your mentors been?
Well, I love the idea of the craft, and he's totally right. Like we have to put ourselves through our own apprenticeship, right? And so there's going to be a learning phase, right? So we want to go through the apprenticeship to achieve our mastery. So that butter art person, I don't know what kind of apprenticeship that was, but that's a fascinating one. They had to do that themselves. For me, my biggest influence when I was younger was Bruce Lee, for sure. I loved Bruce Lee and his philosophy and martial arts. I had the fortunate opportunity to be mentored by Michael Lozier, who's a Canadian author out of Victoria, wrote the book The Law of Attraction, but it was based on neuro-linguistic programming. So it wasn't just, positive thoughts, which I do believe influence our reality, but it's not the only thing. You need to work as well. Like in martial arts, there's yin yang, right? So when I was training with the Shaolin monks, they did meditation and qigong and energy work, but they also punched trees. And that's what I feel like a lot of the spiritual new age community is missing is this, the real element, the physical element, the work element. You need both. You cannot just have one, right? I can visualize doing a double backflip over and over again, but eventually I got to go do that, right? And so, but it's amazing if you combine the two, how productive you are, and that's how you reach your full capacity by using both sides. So, so Michael Lozier was a mentor, and I would say every one of my podcast guests, was a great opportunity for me to learn from amazing people, and and just get a lot of teaching. So I think podcasting has been a real gift, and so. Oh, and then also one of my Native American teachers, David Lombear Senepas, I spent about 3 years really studying and learning from him. So that was very profound as well. I've had a few different Indigenous teachers, but him specifically, very, very fascinating experience. Really learned a lot. We're still connected now, and just a really extraordinary human being and very, very unique.
Nice. No, I love it. Yeah, like it really, like I really think that the the apprenticeship model is something that we've kind of lost. Like I said before, like you kind of mentioned before, is the normal path for, like, let's say you're 18 is finish school, go to university, get a job. Personally, I didn't take that path. Like I went down the apprenticeship path, like in a skilled trade. And you went down obviously like training with Shaolin monks, which is an apprenticeship in itself, right? Um, so yeah, there is definitely a model of doing something, or doing something with purpose in your life that's kind of been lost. I feel, and I think what's great about today's age is that if you want to find information to something, you just have to go Google it on the internet, right? There's lots of resources out there for free. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of guru culture as well, which I'm not the biggest fan of. But there is, if there's something you want to learn, like I usually go to YouTube first, and then find the book on that subject, and then try and connect with the author, the person that is trying to teach, right? Like I'm a big fan of the self education. So yeah, just I really like the fact that like you say, start asking the right questions. And what is this? Do three kind acts a day whenever you are in the world. I
Yeah,
I, I really I really love that.
yeah, that's one of them from my Native American teacher David Lombard Senepas, and of any spiritual teaching I've ever heard, that by far is the best one. I've read a ton of spiritual books, a ton of religious books, a ton of podcasts on the subject. And that to me was the greatest spiritual teaching of all time. Do three kind acts a day, go out of your way to do it, and don't tell anyone. And I was like, that's money. And I always say that I always give that suggestion on my podcast to do three kind acts a day, and do like the quote unquote kindness challenge, where you do that for a week, right? Three kind acts a day, every single day, and you do it for a week. Go out of your way to do it, right? And if you do that, you'll probably get what I refer to as a universal wink. Something strange in reality will happen to you to know that it's spirit, God, or the universe. And so many people have written me and told me about what their weird experience was, because it's always unique. It's always something that like you're like, that is way too random, and you just know it's like this little wink from the universe is like, now you're on the right track. And so when I was younger in my 20s, I wanted to know what the secret was. That's why I went to Tibet. That's why, or Nepal. I tried to go to Tibet, but it's still occupied by China, unfortunately. So I wanted to go to Tibet. I went to Nepal. I did the training with these masters. And what I realized was there's no damn secret. But it's this continuing unfolding. And we do have spirit, God, the creator within us. But we got to start listening to that wherever we are. And so it's just this never ending unfolding path of listening to our intuition and asking ourselves the most important questions. And then wherever we are in the world, putting out some positive output. So doing three kind acts a day would be the fastest way to transform this entire planet. Meditation's great. But three kind acts is better. All these other ways to do it are great. But if everybody's core programming was serving others, doing three kind acts, this whole planet would transform. And, the indigenous culture already had that. If somebody didn't have anything, the community would work together to give them that thing. And so, we've kind of just been so disconnected to, the way the world really lives. Like you use that example of weak men create hard times. And it's so true. We don't know how to produce. We don't know how to take care of ourselves. We're kind of useless. And so we need to go back to being useful, self-sustainable, and then, helping our fellow man. We've kind of, we've checked out, we earn this kind of leisure, but then, kind of people with not good intentions are using that against us. And so we need to kind of get back to our roots here, and what it means to be human, and what it means to be a good person, and to actually live that and be that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, because we've went from a tribal society to agrarian society to industrial, and now we're a technological global society. But within the global society, we still have to we're still acting a lot of the times from a more of a tribal mindset, where it's him versus her, us versus them. Those guys are bad, we're good, we're right, you're wrong. And I don't think the world is that black and white, right? I think there's definitely shades of gray and nuances. I used to have this exact challenge that you're talking about. I called it the 100 Days of Good challenge. I used to do that in my early 20s. I would go. I don't ever like to talk about it, but when I was doing the Tao Te Ching, the one thing that it really talks about is that the world works on circulation, where you have to give more. Like, no matter how much you've thought you've given already, give more. And if you do that, things come back to you in, like you said, really strange, serendipitous sort of ways. Like if you're in a coffee shop or a coffee line, pay for the next person's coffee, but don't tell them that you did it. Things like that, right? That just the small stuff kind of adds up to the bigger goal and the bigger challenge. And you've kind of hinted at this before, but I also like to ask myself, like, how do you want to be remembered? Like, what is your legacy going to be? Right? Like, what is your legacy going to be, Matt? I know that's a kind of a big question.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I love that question, and it's important to think about. And for my hope, I would want people to remember and think or believe that I was kind, that I did my best. You know what I mean? And that's like the most important thing, like to actually do those things, to be of service. And because you never know how you're going to be remembered, but you can look at my work and my life as a track record, right? So you say, oh, I can see what he did. And I just want to be helpful and live a good life and do my best. And so hopefully I'm remembered in that way. And that would be my hope, to be remembered as just a kind person. And so I just like the simplicity of that idea, because I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, I think a lot of people pretend to know what they're doing. I'm just like a child in an adult's body doing my best here. So, but with my work and the podcast and the things that I enjoy, I set the intent to help other people. And so hopefully I can do that with some degree of efficiency. And with the podcast, it's reached number one in quite a few countries, which is great, because my intent is to find the best guests and the best teachings that can help people, reconnect them with their spirit, with their connection with the creator, whatever that is for them, to live a good life, to have more joy and less pain and less depression and less confusion, more connection, more hope, more of the positive feelings. And so I set my intent with that, and hopefully it is helpful, but the result isn't up to me, right? The intent is up to me. And so I just try to be congruent and have integrity with my intent to be of service, and whatever way that unfolds will be following my inspiration. So at one time it was writing a book on peak performance, around sport. And the intent with that was to teach kids about self-mastery through sport. It's a way to kind of Trojan horse self-mastery and spiritual principles in an athletic book. And so that took a lot of time, and that took a lot of effort. And that was the expression, right? So there is a book that's been written, that's available for people. And that's a part of the quote unquote legacy, I guess. And so it'll be continuously unfolding. Maybe at one point I'm just going to be a farmer, and you won't even know who I am. But what I'll try to do is be helpful to my community. And that's enough, right? The peaceful warrior, I think, the guy in there, he's a gas station attendant, and he's just a good person. He helps his community, and that's enough, right? And so the community would remember that human and what he did. So it doesn't have to be grandiose. I think it can be very simple, and that's all I could hope for, I think.
I personally want to find the butter gods and help me get better at carving butter. No, I support this farming. I honestly think that I think it's something that we've kind of lost. Like, we've become so industrialized in terms of our production, that it's an art and skill. Like, my grandfather, his grandfather, like, they're all farmers. Like, that's what they did. And then when there was a war, they picked up their guns and went to war. That's what men did back in the day, right? I personally don't want it to see it come to war again. Um, but what we've traditionally seen is there's an 80-year cycle, right? Uh, that comes around. The last major world conflict was in 1945. So that was just over 80 years ago. Um, and there's if you look at the United States, like I don't want to get too political, but like if you look at the United States, how divided the two sides are, left and right. There doesn't seem to be much common ground anymore. It's very polarized, right? There's California and there's Texas and then there's New York. They're all very different places. Uh, I don't know. It's very interesting to see what's going to unfold in the next 5 years. Um, how do you like? Like? What's your ideal vision for the future? And then we'll close on that. What's your ideal vision for the future, Matt?
Well, that's another really great question. And yeah, we're getting more divided. There are cycles to this because this gets architected by the global elite. So they do run it in cycles. It's the same old game when you understand it. And so my hope for the future and what I believe will happen, we'll have groups of people that are going back to a simpler time of food production, clean food, clean water, and real food. We're not even getting real food anymore. So as this gets worse, and it will, those people are going to move into that type of world, which is it's gonna decay, it's gonna fall apart. They want to move towards a technocracy, so that's everybody getting vaccinated with gene therapy. It's going to kill a lot of people. It's going to do all that kind of stuff, and people will want to participate in that, and they will. And then the other group of people are going to want to be good people who want to know where their food's coming from. They want to be sustainable. They want to live simply, and I think it's going to be a very beautiful existence. And then from that, I feel like we're going to have a whole new world. But this world, as people imagined it last year, is not going to come back. The people that want to architect this are going to destroy the dang thing, and the people who want something better are going to create that. And then from that, I believe we'll have peace. I think that this world will see peace for the first time because we have to rid ourselves of this satanic Luciferian parasite, and that's what it is. It's a parasite on the planet, and only humans can do that, and only spirit can do that, and only the Creator can do that, which is in all people. Is the same Creator spiritual force, and so we got to get reconnected with the land, reconnected with each other, and we're being hijacked, right, through our minds and through the money and the systems, right? We kind of been pacified and hijacked. And so right now, I think it's a process of awakening and reclaiming our spirit and reclaiming our, because war doesn't make any sense. Like I said at the beginning, why the hell do we have war? It doesn't make any sense. People don't want to harm us. Well, it's a parasite that is influencing us. So we need to stop engaging with all of that.
Well said. Your mic's kind of glitching a little bit.
Yeah, no, so my apologies. I got to get a new thing here. Just started doing that. So we need to stop engaging with that, and then we need to create something based on values and truth and spirituality and compassion and kindness and sense. You know what I mean? And we will create that. There will be groups of people that create that, and from that we will birth a new civilization, and it'll happen fast. And the parasitical system will just fall away because our power and our connection and what we make will be beautiful, and people will see that opportunity. And I think that's what's happening now. This is this great awakening to get rid of this parasitical system that people don't even know exists, but it does. It definitely does, and we're experiencing that, and we're going to experience more of it. And but I think it's going to collapse on itself, and people are going to realize how awful it was. And some won't, right? It's going to be a choice. It's going to be a choice, and those people are going to participate in it, but a lot of people will. And I think the people listening to your podcast will be on that side of thing. They just want to participate in what's right and what's true and what's good.
Yeah, like like if you think of it, like a parasite can't survive without the host, right?
Exactly.
If you think of that analogy, right? And if the host is putting in healthy food, like mind feeding healthy food, not succumbing to the 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 internet misinformation, actually seeking the truth, as Matt likes to say. uh, so yeah, in that regard, Matt, what is the best place for people, our listeners, to connect with you online or offline?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. For the listeners, go to mattbelair.com. I also have a Telegram group. I got deleted everywhere. I was part of that censorship. So censorship is absolutely bonkers right now. But go to my website, sign up for the email list is the best way. And then also Telegram if you're not over there. I just started to go back on Instagram. I had like 40,000, followers, which I'm just saying, it's a lot of work. I don't, it's nice to have that many followers, but they deleted me, and it was a way to share information. That was like 6 years of hard work of putting out good information, and so they just delete me. So we're over on Telegram now. And all places YouTube, but I got a strike on YouTube. So it's a fascinating thing, Now I'm like figuring out these underground places where I can continue to do my work and share the podcast and stay connected to people. So that would be the best way I would say, go over there for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm a part of your Telegram group. There's really good information on there. There's an event happening worldwide on March 20th, right?
Oh, is that the worldwide protest?
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. And the Telegram groups, right? It's mostly the people that got deleted from from all social. So it's like independent researchers, right? And it's funny because I wasn't on Facebook, and I went over there and I was like, "What a cesspool of nonsense this place is." I was like, completely forgot because it's like all people who've lost respect. Like you can have a difference of opinion, that's no problem. But the some people are just chosen to be total buttholes. You know what I mean? And they've lost their freaking mind. And so it's such a dark place. There's no problem having a difference of opinion. It's just the way that you go about it. And so, the internet, Facebook is just nonsense. Twitter's, it's all, now we're seeing what these systems are built to do. And that's why it's a technocracy. They're using technology against us. Half the YouTube videos that I saved are deleted when doing this research about what's going on with COVID. Half of them are gone. You can't find it in a Google search. You can't even find it anywhere. So that's why it's so damn confusing. So Facebook censoring. I was trying to watch these videos on Instagram. Someone was sending me. They don't even play. Like they know exactly what they're doing and what's going on. Anything to dissent against this new world order, globalist agenda, anything anti-vax is gone. And so you can't even, they even deleted and censored Robert Kennedy Jr. You know what I mean? Like it's absurd. So yeah, so get on over to Telegram and you'll get good links there because if you're not there, they're really tough to find. They're banned, shadow banned, deleted, censored. The Epoch Times is actually pretty good too. So, but Telegram is definitely my number one. A lot of great links in there.
Excellent. Yeah, and as always, you can find me online at my Insta handle, Bill_Ete at Instagram, on Twitter, a Doomer Bloomer podcast on Facebook as well, and YouTube. I really enjoyed having you, Matt, and I want to continue having this conversation in the future. All right.
I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Cheers.